Hello and welcome back to the semifinals of the World Championship in Through the Ages. Today we are going to take a look at the conclusion of Group 3, and if you remember where we left off, you might remember that kyshantry had a really strong start into those semifinals. After the 3 and 4 player games finished, he is in first position. He has a 8 points lead towards both wolvs and dots, who are at second and third position. So he has a very comfortable lead, but it's still possible for actually all of the opponents to overtake him or at least tie with him. And with that, of course, we are very interested to see how that group will end. And the game that we are going to take a look at today is the two-player game of kyshantry against wolvs. Wolves definitely needs a win, but even with a win, he still needs to hope for some bad results for kyshantry in the other games and needs some other good results for himself. Yeah, but let's see how that game went, and then at the end of the video we are going to take a look at the final standings of this group. Alright, here we are in the game, and first of all we're going to take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see that in H2 there are not that many culture leaders. Anthony Gaudi is the only leader synergizing with culture buildings. There are both Suez Canal and James Cook though. There's no ocean liner, but there is Maria Theresa. There's Newton for strong economical setup, maybe together with the railroad. In H3 we have the Hollywood though, and also Marlene Dietrich, so that could be strong, but no Fleming, no Chaplin. We have both Sid Meier and Steve Jobs. We have Gandhi to potentially hide behind. There's the Red Cross in the game, also Churchill for the military. Then we have two military action leaders in H2 and also two in H1, Genghis Khan and Barbarossa to help with the strength. Barbarossa, maybe the only really strong colonization leader from H1. And then also both Leonardo and Gutenberg are there for some lab and printing press synergy. We have both Silk Road and Universitas, the Great Wall, but no Himeji Castle. And also the Machu Picchu is there. There's no Acropolis in the game. kyshantry is already able to do a strong pick here with his first move, taking Hammurabi, so that is of course not bad, and actually now I'm very interested to see what wolves will choose as a counterplay, because I think maybe to counter and play against Hammurabi's weakness, it could be very interesting to now take Colossus Urban Growth, maybe go for Sun Tzu and try to go for a bit of a military setup, also with the chance of maybe setting up a nice colony game. I think maybe that's is too strong to ignore it, but let's see if he went for that or maybe did something different. He goes for the Colossus and he goes for the Urban Growth, yes, and the next turn he probably will go for Sun Tzu, and that definitely also has a lot of potential for him. However, that also means that he actually leaves the pyramids to kyshantry, so kyshantry being able to go for a very strong economical setup. He might also take the Engineering Genius here, maybe just Engineering Genius plus pyramids, I could imagine, making use out of Hammurabi's additional action. So it looks like it might be a fight of having a strong economy against a strong military setup. Let's see which player will be at a better position at the end of H1. Wolves goes for Sun Tzu, elects him, builds the lab first, interestingly, wants to have the additional science a bit earlier, which is definitely reasonable, and then he increases his population. kyshantry increases his population, builds the second lab, takes the first copy of Knights. I think that's a good safety pick, and then he also takes a copy of Frugality, doesn't want to go into consumption early. The Code of Laws falls down to two civil actions. Let's see if wolves will take it or if he will just completely focus on maybe some military development. Development of civil life is revealed by him. He seeds the first event into the deck. He uses that development to build a third mine, and I guess he has a lot of free actions anyway. Code of Laws is just such an important technology, maybe not even that important for kyshantry because he has both Hammurabi and pyramids, but for wolves certainly a strong technology to get. Will he just take the breakthrough together with it so that he maybe can develop it and still has a reasonable amount of science left after, or is he rather going for something like alchemy reserves here? Let's see. I think maybe the breakthrough could actually be a fine pick. He goes for the alchemy here. Also a fine pick, maybe aiming towards a more economical setup. Also, of course, heavily depends on his draws here, what play makes the most sense. Now it's kyshantry's turn. He will build two steps of the pyramids, is missing one resource to finish it. Takes the Engineering Genius 1. Maybe he's aiming towards the Universitas that is coming down the row, maybe providing him with an even stronger economical setup. Also a copy of Monarchy is coming down the row. Let's see if maybe Wolves has some interest in denying that from kyshantry. And then Kyshantry also gets this breakthrough for one civil action, which I think is quite strong. Wolves seeds again and opens the development of warfare. Can't really make use out of that one because that would cause an uprising. So he doesn't take it, and it looks like he maybe doesn't want to go for the most aggressive play here, rather maybe transitions into a bit of an economical focused play himself, goes for Gutenberg here and probably elects him already, or is he waiting a little bit with that? Now he goes for him immediately, develops the alchemy for cheaper, takes the irrigation, the rich land and the frugality, all some very decent cards for one civil action, has a full hand now though, and maybe could have some small hand space issues, but at the next turn maybe can use Gutenberg and go for the irrigation as well. So he is going for a bit of an economical setup here now. Then it's Kyshantry's turn, he will finish the pyramids. I wouldn't be surprised to see him taking Universitas here, even though the Great Wall maybe could also be strong, but especially now that Wolves maybe didn't go for a lot of military play, it looks like going for Universitas might be quite strong. He also takes the monarchy and the patriotism. Wolves seeds and opens the development of religion. He can take that one, has missed out on the free warrior, but now can take the free religion. Kyshantry was able to take both here. He uses Gutenberg to go for an upgrade from lab to alchemy. Then he goes for the irrigation. As said, he had full hand space, so he needs to get rid of something, can't use the frugality, just goes for 2 upgrades, uses the rich land, takes the masonry, which he at the next turn maybe can develop, and then use it to save some resources and also save an action on finishing the Colossus. Then it's Kyshantry's turn. He seeds and opens the development of agriculture, so additional food for both players. The event deck is flipped now, and Wolves has seeded 3 Kyshantry 1 event. Kyshantry is missing 1 resource to finish his wonder, but can build the first step. Goes for Leonardo, interestingly, so probably aiming towards the alchemy here, which will give him a lot of science. He will have the Universitas plus Leonardo plus the alchemy, so that is quite strong, and yeah, I mean, that is definitely quite powerful. Actually, he isn't going for the alchemy this turn. Oh, of course, if he goes for Leonardo here, he gets the resource this turn, and now out of the sudden he has the one missing resource, of course, to finish the Universitas. So I thought, for a moment, okay, he is going for the actions first instead of maybe going for the alchemy and getting the science first. But of course, with developing the monarchy, he can get both the actions and the science. Is now sitting at 6 civil and 3 military actions at 4 science production, which he soon can boost even further if he now goes for the alchemy. Maybe could even think about a printing press for Antoni Gaudi, but I think just the alchemy is maybe better here. Still takes the breakthrough, even though he has a lot of science. That's the Iron Stay and 2 civil actions for Wolves. Wolves develops the Masonry, finishes the Colossus, and takes the Machu Picchu. Interestingly, there could maybe be a small chance of a hate draft here, with Kyshantry potentially being able to deny the second copy of Iron. However, it was Kyshantry who actually has proven, I think it was in one of the 4-player games, that Machu Picchu can actually be quite fine also only with food production if you play it correctly. I don't know if you remember that game. I think that was quite a nice play from Kyshantry in that game, taking the Machu Picchu without having an iron and then still making really nice use out of that food that he had thanks to the Machu Picchu. So let's see how it will work out for Wolves. Let's the irrigation stay in 2 civil actions for Kyshantry. Uses Gutenberg to take the building press. I guess the additional food that he is producing already, and he will have even more with the Machu Picchu, will be nice for him to just make more use out of Gutenberg with going for some printing presses and maybe going for Antoni Gaudi later on. Kyshantry this turn goes for the alchemy. Is now at 6 science production. I'm very interested to see, will he go for the iron denial? Maybe it's not really necessary. It would be quite expensive, and especially if he takes the swordsman now it would cause corruption. I guess if he denies it, he would then increase his population, and maybe he can somehow make it that it stays awkwardly in 2 civil actions. I think that would maybe then be the better solution. He goes for the swordsman already this turn with the 2 upgrades. He makes sure to be stronger, takes the urban growth, and interesting play here, increases his population, so he is actually skipping the iron here. There's the other copy coming, which very likely will be taken by Wolves. Maybe it will be a bit awkward for him having to take it for 2 civil actions, so that is that. But of course, there's only one copy of Cole in two-player games, so kyshantry maybe not knowing exactly whether and when he will be able to get into upgraded mines here, but on the other hand, he has lots of science production with Leonardo, which will produce some additional resources. He has a fine amount of actions, so maybe he can be fine here. Still interesting that he just took that urban growth here and over the iron. I mean, it's late iron. In a 3 and 4 player game, I would be more inclined to skip the iron here, but I think also in a 2-player, I think in a 2-player game it's more easily possible to play on bronze mines than in a 3 and 4 player game. On the other hand, it's still strong to have some additional resource production, even in a 2-player game, and the coal could be hate drafted or very late, the one copy is, so because of that I kind of value it to have a bit of iron setup, but maybe it's fine here. He could get rewarded with the coal, and there could maybe also even be the chance of the Suez Canal here. So let's see how that works out. At least it already makes sure that wolvs has to take that iron now for 2, and cannot wait until it falls down to 1 civil action, so he's also immediately causing some issues for wolvs, which also is quite strong. He also reveals the fighting band tactic here, using all of his military actions this turn, meaning he will get more draws in H2. Wolves will get now immediately some draws from the Colossus. He is willing to see it, which might indicate, I just wanted to say, that might indicate that he didn't push any strength events in there, but there's actually the Reign of Terror revealed, which costs him population. Would be interesting to know whether actually kyshantry was brave enough to seed that in as his one event, or if maybe it was seeded by wolves and he now just didn't find a nice way to get into more military. I think some of the military attacks were very late. The first copy of 9s was taken very early by kyshantry. I guess wolves might just increase his population 2 times and take the iron. Let's see if he will do something else, and then of course also develop the printing press with Gutenberg. Or I guess he could also go for the second upgrade to labs, but he also will need a lot of resource to finish the Machu Picchu here. So let's see what he will do. He will build a warrior, has lost that to the Reign of Terror, takes the iron, and I guess it only costs 1 resource with the masonry, but increases population. Maybe there could be rats coming, or he doesn't have knowledge about it, or there could be pestilence coming, which would make sense for him to seed with having that early additional food production. And he could have maybe gone for the upgrade with good. I guess. Wait, I'm of course stupid. He has of course still the action of Gutenberg, and he will go for the upgrade here. I was a bit confused for a moment, but yeah. So he can do both. He can increase his population, and he can use Gutenberg here, and has now also some fine assigned setup. But he is still low in actions. Has of course the additional action from Gutenberg, but yeah, let's see how that position will play out for him. Now it's kyshantry's turn. He will increase his population, takes the cartography. Maybe there could indeed be a colony coming, or he's just thinking that maybe wolves could have seeded some. Also, he has that much science that he can easily invest into the cartography, gets an additional resource with Leonardo, and still has more than enough science for everything else. He plays the patriotism, builds a swordsman, and if he gets the coal, then thanks to the 1 resource that he gets when developing it with Leonardo, he has exactly enough to go for 1 upgrade at the next turn if it should be in the row. Wolves this turn develops the printing press with Gutenberg. Ooh, that's a very interesting pick here, indicating that there are probably multiple colonies coming, or maybe the strongest one of the bunch, the vast territory 1, and that wolves maybe doesn't want to give those colonies to kyshantry. So he's actually willing to take the navigation here for 3 civil actions. But it's also an extremely expensive investment here for him, being only in 4 civil actions plus Gutenberg, and now taking the navigation for 3 while still needing to get into iron, needing to finish the Machu Picchu, which now might get quite delayed, still also needing actions to increase his population. But yeah, I mean, giving a bunch of colonies cheaply for kyshantry would be quite bad as well, especially with the Suez Canal coming, so it's probably awkward if wolves indeed has committed to some colonies, so he's actually willing to go for the navigation here for that many actions. I guess it could of course also play a part that he just wants to get a bit of additional strength. Kyshantry could maybe threaten an aggression. He just develops it, probably builds a warrior to get out of corruption, and also to have 1 more to send away for colonies. Now it's kyshantry's turn. He seeds, and there is the first colony revealed. 2 high bits. but kyshantry is nonetheless able to win that one, but a lot of colonization cards are gone. Let's see if there are more colonies coming. The first one was now won by kyshantry, and those 6 additional resources, with him not having taken the iron, are definitely quite a big help for him, and I think also the blue tokens with being on bronze mines I think that's quite a nice colony for him to win. Also interesting that he is willing to take the first copy of Opera here for 3 civil actions. I guess maybe he is struggling a little bit to find something useful to invest into. Maybe could have still gone for something like Silk Road, but the science production is not really that much needed. And maybe also wants to leave himself open for Suez Canal or maybe Railroad or something. And so he's just taking the Opera here. There's an early Antony Gaudi coming down the road. Let's see if maybe wolvs will take him away, or maybe even kyshantry just takes both cards, which would seem a bit expensive. I rather would guess that maybe he's just building an Opera, which of course would mean he would miss out on the potential of the science discount from Gaudi, but maybe Gaudi is taken away by wolvs anyways. Let's see what kyshantry will be doing. He is indeed going for the Opera, at least getting the resource from Leonardo, which I guess in his position might be worth more anyway than the science discount from Antony Gaudi. He uses the urban growth that he has taken earlier. Still has a solid amount of resources left, and I guess he can now either take another urban growth or a copy of cannons. He goes for the urban growth, which I think is a useful card for him. However, for now he's out of population, he's on bronze mine, so if those key cards are maybe late or at an awkward timing, then his position could still be a bit problematic, while wolves soon will have more than enough population to work with. But kyshantry now having set up a bit of a culture production. Wolves seeds and event revealed is the good harvest, giving wolves even more food. At this point it could even be a bit of a burden, making it more difficult for him to get out of corruption. He is increasing his population, not using the frugality, which isn't a surprise to me. Increases his population again, uses Gutenberg to build a printing press, increases his population again, and takes the revolutionary idea. At this point, he's of course really hoping that he soon might have a chance to get an H2 government form going. At least he has also still the Code of Laws in hand. And he doesn't take Antony Gaudi. I guess it just wasn't really possible. Let's see if kyshantry is maybe now going for immediately, increasing his culture, lead even more, and wolves might then be able to go for Newton, or maybe Maria Theresa, I guess, could be very strong for him with that strong food production. Even though, of course, Maria would have really liked it to already be the leader of the civilization at this turn. Doesn't take the cannons, meaning the second copy of cannons might be quite heavily contested, and he is willing to miss out on 2 draws to get a bit stronger, which could be an indicator that there actually could be another strength event coming, or maybe a really strong colony like Vast 1, where he really wants to make sure that he gets every additional bonus that he can get to potentially win that one. Ooh, interesting. Kyshantry is actually willing to destroy an HE temple here. What is he doing with that? Is he actually transitioning that one into the Opera, which probably then also means that he doesn't go for Antony Gaudi, because then deleting the temple wouldn't really sound or look that great. So that looks interesting. I mean, if he doesn't delete it, he has some issues getting out of corruption. Yeah, let's see where he's going with that. He actually does build a second Opera, takes the breakthrough, the efficient upgrade in the reserves, gets some strong yellow cards, but doesn't take Antony Gaudi. What leader does he want to go for instead? Not sure, maybe Napoleon for a bit of help for the military, but I think Antony Gaudi would have been quite strong. I'm not sure if it is really worth it to make that somewhat costly transition into a second Opera and not just go for Antony Gaudi and get some additional cultural production like that, and now also leaving Antony Gaudi for wolves, who can easily get now a jump in culture. So let's see what kyshantry is planning with all of this. Also, he doesn't take the Republic away, which might be the perfectly fine choice. The government denial isn't always the best thing to do, even in 2-player games. However, with it dropping actually to 2 civil actions, wolves can play the revolutionary idea, and he has now enough actions left to take and develop the Republic. Can't go for the Conmon, at least not this turn, so I guess he will go for the Republic now. Develops it. I wouldn't be surprised to see him going for Antony Gaudi here. He takes Gutenberg, he uses Gutenberg to take the journalism. But he doesn't go for Gaudi here. Maybe he was a bit afraid of some potential military pressure that kyshantry could go for with Napoleon. I mean, kyshantry just ignoring Antony Gaudi could already be a sign that maybe he could have something potentially dangerous, like a war in hand, and was fine with going for Napoleon and trying a bit of counterplay. So wolvs has already a bit of a culture lead. He is on 2 military actions now, doesn't know whether he will get the strategy or not. If kyshantry gets the strategy, he can easily take and develop it with the amount of science that he's having. So probably wolvs just feeling a bit safer here with going for Napoleon. Let's see if he will actually elect him immediately, or if he is planning on using Gutenberg for maybe 1 or 2 more turns. He is electing him, also getting more draws like that immediately, increases his population, builds another warrior interestingly, and then ends his turn. Let's see if he will actually still finish the Machu Picchu, or if that will just be discarded. This turn, kyshantry gets the selective breeding, still needs to wait for a potential coal, but the food production is also extremely important, maybe even more important. Problem for him being, if he wants to go for some upgrades immediately, he will miss out on the strategies. Let's see if he is prioritizing getting those upgrades in as quickly as possible, if he maybe wants to grab the strategy. My gut feeling, not sure. I mean, the strategy would just also be that useful for wolves. My gut feeling would be that he will go for the strategy, but it looks like he will go for the upgrades, and it might be the correct decision. There's not that much left from H2. There will be other solutions and things. Strong things like H3 government forms, military theory in H3, and I think it's just very strong getting the food production started right now, especially now that kyshantry might be eyeing Maria Theresa as his upcoming leader. And also at least he lets the strategy stay in 2 civil actions, and I think wolves still has a bunch of things to do. Wolves seats and a scientific breakthrough is revealed. Interesting now seeing that there was actually only the wealthy territory, the only colony from that event deck. Looking back at that navigation grab from wolves, maybe there was indeed also the strength maybe played a part in that, or just the wealthy territory was actually relatively swingy in this position, with both players being on bronze mines and the 6 additional resources actually being extremely helpful for wolves, maybe to get this Machu Picchu going quickly, but still it feels a bit expensive now that we only saw 1 colony so far. Then wolves will go for the iron this turn, goes for an upgrade, goes for another upgrade, and it looks like he might not finish the Machu Picchu here. At this point it might be a bit late anyway, even though the additional food might still be helpful. Takes the efficient upgrade, cavalryman and strategy. Now it's kyshantry's turn. He's actually now with the scientific breakthrough revealed 28 science saved up. Maria Theresa being a bit late here, he takes the justice system, can easily invest into that. I also think he will definitely take the architecture here. Maybe he will take the copy of cannons, that's the only one left. Both players haven't a copy yet. He develops the architecture and he indeed takes the cannons, I guess, against Napoleon, and with having strategy now, that's an important safety measure. And yeah, he saves up his food for now, maybe planning on increasing that with Maria Theresa at the next turn. Now it's Wolf's turn. He will go for the team sports. There is no beer in the game, but he needs a happy face solution. Could have also gone for the organized religion with already having a religion. I guess team sports can of course still be fine on its own. And then he will actually develop it immediately, builds one, goes for an upgrade to iron with the efficient upgrade for free, uses the frugality 1 before he loses it to the end of the age, and then takes the reserves, giving coal for 1 civil action for kyshantry, however making it that if kyshantry takes the coal, he also needs to take Maria Theresa at the same turn, as otherwise she will be discarded. And interestingly, wolves revealing the hussars tactic, maybe wanting to use some military actions now instead of H3. Or maybe even potentially threatening something, because if he has an H2 war, he could declare it at the next turn now, go for the strategy and go for 2 cavalrymen, but I guess he could have done that also with not revealing the hussars tactic right now. Alright, and also now H3 has just started, so let's take a look at the position, and I will make my guess who will win the game at the end. When we take a look at the culture, it's actually extremely close. Kyshantry having a 1 culture lead before wolves. Kyshantry of course having the higher production, so he might get a little bit of a lead over the next turns. Then kyshantry not going for the iron earlier on, might have made wolves turn a bit awkward, but he himself also needed to do some somewhat awkward things, going for the opera, destroying the religion to go for the second one just to invest into something. It still did something. He has now the culture lead, or a small culture lead, will maybe soon have a bigger one. He still has lots of science production. If there's an H3 government form revealed soon, that could give him a really big boost. And he also can maybe still go for the coal now. Maybe we'll just ignore it, but he could still go for the coal and um, fixes his resource production like this, has 7 civil actions, can get even more if he gets lucky with an H3 government form, can maybe get some help from Maria Theresa for the resources as well. So I think he has a fine position. However, there's also the organized religion that he maybe somewhat needs, so it could be a bit difficult for him to spend his actions efficiently this turn. For wolves, on the other hand, he has a bit more of a basic economy, has a printing press, has a bit of variety. Actually, very nice Antoni Gaudi civilization, but he chose to go for Napoleon. Let's see if he will actually go for a bit of military pressure. Actually, he doesn't have enough science to go for both strategy and cavalryman. I missed out on that. Yeah, I mean, let's see if he will go for a bit of a military push or if he will just build up more culture, maybe a bit more economy, and just try to stay in the game peacefully. At the moment, I think it's quite close. It's not easy to say which player has the better position here. Let's also take a look at the H3 leaders. I mean, kyshantry is better prepared for Marlene Dietrich. If wolvs goes for some military pressure, there's Gandhi to hide behind. kyshantry is better prepared for the Hollywood right now. Both have 2 alchemies, so the lab leaders they are similarly well prepared for. I think I will guess on kyshantry here, but it's very close. I think both players definitely have the ability to win this game from here on. Both have the same amount of actions. wolvs has of course the bigger resource production, but kyshantry, as said, might now get Maria and might still be able to get into coal now, and has just even more science to get a bigger boost from H3 government form. So my guess is with kyshantry here. He will go for Maria. Interestingly, he takes the wave of nationalism. I don't know if he maybe is indeed a bit afraid of something happening immediately, even though, as I noticed, wolvs doesn't have enough science to go for strategy and cavalryman at his next turn. Nonetheless, of course, 6 additional resources might be very viable, and with taking that for 2 civil actions, it looks like he is indeed willing to just skip the coal, which is, I think, is fine at this point. I mean, it's the beginning of H3, and maybe he can just be fine with the additional resource from Maria, plus taking some yellow cards. Interestingly, though, he will now skip the organized religion, and there's the professional sports in the row, meaning that wolvs could deny that, and then he could have some issues with his happy faces, but there is Marlene Dietrich and Steve Jobs in the game to maybe help him in such a situation. He will then increase his population and builds another opera, and I guess if he goes for that second opera, he maybe needs the wave of nationalism to just feel safe enough, and generally if he's now skipping the coal, the wave might just be extremely helpful to make sure that he can build up enough military in case wolvs will decide to go for a bit of a military push. Let's see if wolvs will deny the professional sports. First of all, he cedes and the developed territory is revealed, which this time wolvs is able to win for just a warrior, so that's a nice win for him. He goes for the strategy, goes for the cavalryman, builds one, builds another one, thanks to revealing the tactic at the turn before already. He will now get the full 3 H3 draws, takes the breakthrough, takes the professional sports, and also takes the rifleman. Maybe he has already drawn a strong H3 tactic or just wants to have them in hand to be prepared in case he will draw one later. And I mean, now he is sitting at 25 strength and I mean, doesn't have the most population, has not the most resource saved up, but still is a bit threatening, and kyshantry has to respond to that. kyshantry, though, is now running a bit away with the culture with the 3rd opera that he built. And as said, there are both Marlene and Gandhi in the game to potentially help kyshantry. And for now, he has Maria Theresa. Marlene Dietrich is actually coming down the road. kyshantry, though, taking the military theory, which also will be extremely helpful for him. So let's see if he will also take Marlene or if he will give wolvs the chance to take her. But maybe that would be fine. He has Maria for now and could still go for Gandhi potentially if he gets pressured with the military. He develops the military theory, increases his population 2 times, builds a cannon, doesn't reveal a tactic for now. But with that many military actions, maybe he is well enough prepared to defend against an aggression. Now it's Wolf's turn. He seeds and opens the wealthy territory, which again he is able to win. Let's see how much he has to pay this time. Has already sent some colonization cards away for the developed territory 1. Of course, ideally for him, he just needs to send those warriors away, but he would need some more colonization cards for that. But he has them another one from age 2 and from age 3, so now he can make a very clean transition into the Hussars tactic. He increases his population, builds another cavalryman, actually destroys this religion, builds in again another cavalryman, takes the reserves, another copy of reserves and the tanks, so he's continuing his military push. But his Kyle fleet will be getting bigger, and I'm not sure if he can pull enough something strong. On the other hand, kyshantry has revealed a tactic. If he indeed has no tactic to work with, then of course wolves might be in a position where he can win a potential war. But let's see also if Gandhi will be revealed, and if kyshantry will now decide to go for Marlene, or maybe if he wants to leave himself open for Gandhi. kyshantry first of all takes the air forces. Churchill is of course also a leader that could help him. He spans the unit of swordsmen and puts it into cannon, which is a kind of an indicator for me that he could maybe have the fortifications in hand. And he indeed does, goes up to 19 strength. Let's see if the fortifications will be strong enough to help him. We'll go for Marlene, plays reserves for food, takes the urban growth, takes the endowment, doesn't elect Marlene yet. Maybe can increase this population 2 more times in the next turn with Maria, which gives him 2 culture and 2 science. So missing out on the 3 culture and the 1 happy face should probably be worth it. Also takes the endowment. Maybe it will just end up being a hate draft unless wolves will overtake kyshantry at some point. Also there's the Red Cross coming down the row, which could be a cheap way for kyshantry maybe to spend some food, even though it is a bit of an anti-synergy with his plans of using Maria Theresa more often, and with him being willing to keep her, I guess that the Red Cross is maybe not really his plan, but of course depending on what wolves does could still be a nice option at his next turn. And wolves tries a blunder, but kyshantry is able to defend, so that one doesn't go through. It would have been quite bad for kyshantry, so if that would have gone through, that could have been quite a heavy swing against kyshantry. Wolves goes for the tanks, actually destroys some other building here, so keeping the alchemy, so prioritizing the additional science production over the culture production. I guess he did some calculations, even how likely it is that he will need the additional science. And yeah, with destroying the religion, with destroying the printing press, wolves is now going all in on military, and I'm not entirely convinced if his military setup will be strong enough to defeat kyshantry. He might have needed that successful blunder here, but he is going up to 41 strength, takes Churchill and the reserves, keeps Napoleon for now. So didn't want to use the resources, and I guess also the science. He did develop the tanks, could have saved 3 science and 3 resources, maybe plans on potentially going for another aggression at the next turn, and then maybe planning on to go for a war at 2 turns or something. He didn't get any draws, so it looks like he might have the cards that he needs for his next turns already in hand. Ideally, at least. Maybe he just wants to put some pressure on kyshantry, but pressure alone, I think, will not be enough for him to win this game. kyshantry seeds and the Ravages of Time are revealed. Wolves will lose the Colossus, and kyshantry will lose the Pyramids. He will increase his population 2 times, doesn't go for the Red Cross here, or I guess he could still go for it, but I assume he won't. Will elect Marlene Dietrich now, goes for the air forces, and has 9 additional resources for the military with having played the wave of nationalism. Builds an air force, builds another air force, builds another cannons, is now even stronger than wolves, takes the rockets and also the revolutionary idea, making it that wolves can't take that many cards from the row without ending the age. And kyshantry's lead now getting bigger and bigger. Let's see, wolves can't go for an aggression. I'm also not sure if he can go for war this turn. He also will lose Napoleon, who of course is only giving him 2 strength with only having cavalry units. But he is actually going for a war already this turn. So let's see what he can come up with. I of course didn't do any calculations, and I guess kyshantry doesn't have any resources left, so he has basically already, he can build 1 swordsman maybe. So I guess wolves can of course overtake kyshantry, which then might be enough, even though, and luckily for him, there's still the fundamentalism in the deck. At this point though, he might just need to hope that the fundamentalism will stay in the deck at kyshantry's turn, and that he won't have a chance to get that, and that maybe he himself, with maybe taking the revolutionary idea, can have a chance to get a fundamentalism at the next turn. I guess that's a gamble that maybe he has to take at this turn. I guess he also might need to deny the military buildup, at least if his plan is to go for 2 wars. He develops the professional sport, so going for fundamentalism himself is maybe not the plan, but it frees up this work, or I guess he is just going for an additional arena, but he's also destroying something and goes for an additional tank. Upgrades here, could upgrade here, is now at 58 strength. 1 war alone won't be enough. He makes sure to only reveal 3 cards, meaning it's a 50-50 whether kyshantry gets the fundamentalism. He would still lose the war with the fundamentalism, but of course it would get a lot closer, which would be bad for wolves. And unfortunately for wolves, the fundamentalism is revealed, which helps kyshantry quite a bit to defend himself. Wolves also didn't deny the military buildup, maybe just didn't find the civil actions to do that, meaning a follow-up war I also don't really see being very strong. So I guess he can go for 2 more cavalrymen, or 1 cavalryman and a tank with Churchill or something like that. Yeah, but it looks like kyshantry might be able to defend that one. Let's see if wolves will go for a second war. First of all, H4 will start. Wolves will steal 10 cults from kyshantry, but as you can see, kyshantry is still having a big lead, and he will get another relatively strong production. And wolves doesn't have a second war, gets the Cold War, but yeah, at this point I think it's almost impossible for him to come back. I guess he can maybe go for something like spaceflight. Kyshantry can't go for any wonder. But I guess wolves can't even go for one, he is missing 1 resource, so only if he has a helpful H2 event on top he can actually do this. Goes for the civil service, goes for printing presses, rebuilding some stuff, now takes the engineering, that could be a sign that maybe he has seeded impact of progress, or is afraid that kyshantry could go for that, even though it would only be a +1 for him, and then also takes the patriotism. Kyshantry develops the rockets, plays the military buildup, goes for some upgrades, destroys a mine, builds a 4th opera, 19 culture reduction he has now, and wolves I think can't catch up to that. He also doesn't have the biggest impacts, I think. Destroys a mine to go for another lab. Will he maybe fight for something like impact of science? It might be. I guess at this point he needs to play towards some ideal impacts anyway. And then he will build another arena, and before the final impacts, the gap I think is just too big in order for there any chance. In order for wolves having any chance to come back, impact of culture will make the gap even bigger, kyshantry getting +10. There is indeed the impact of science, so wolves getting +10 as well, and then the last impact is the impact of wonders, which is +4 for kyshantry against wolves. Yeah, so at the end, kyshantry being able to win that game. He went for an interesting setup here, or did some interesting choices. Apparently for him it's not really a big deal just playing on bronze mines, so interesting to see that he can make that work also on a very high level, but it's definitely possible to make something like that work, and if you are especially experienced in that kind of play style, then I don't think it's an issue to just play on bronze mines once in a while. And no, he just went for some operas early in H2, with being on bronze mines, but he had some resources, especially thanks to the wealthy territory, and thanks to that he had those operas, didn't fall behind in culture, which otherwise might have been the case with wolves going for Gutenberg, and then in H3 he managed to take the lead, was prepared for Marlene Dietrich, took the wave of nationalism, took some other yellow cards, was able to defend himself with the fortifications tactic. Wolves went for an all-in into military. Maybe that was his best shot, but being in a position where that is the best shot maybe in H3 is also not that great to be in. I'm not sure. Taking Napoleon, if it was the right call, maybe he could have just gone for Antoni Gaudi and then hoping maybe that he has a chance getting the strategy, but of course that could have backfired quite heavily. Maybe kyshantry would have then taken the strategy for more expensive, could have gone for Napoleon himself, and then the game would have been completely different, but maybe still a bit challenging for wolves. But with taking Napoleon, he kind of needed to do something with the strength, and that at the end he couldn't really do, which led to kyshantry winning that game. Yeah, And I guess with kyshantry being able to win that game, it should look really, really good for him for the standings. So I would be surprised if it's not his name that we will now see on top when we take a look at the final standings of Group 3. Alright, I still haven't taken a look at the final results. Maybe we can, before I do that, quickly check out how some of the other games went. Also, if in case you didn't know, in case you really like following some tournament games but don't like getting spoiled, there's this trick. If you scroll very carefully, you can click on the eye here, get the code without having seen the game result. Uh, back then, back in the days when the replay feature got released, I watched a lot of tournament games, and a nice little trick to know in case you want to watch some games unspoiled. But now let's take a look at the games. kyshantry also managing to win the two-player game against Dots, HC squared winning against Dots, wolvs winning against Dots, Dots HC squared winning against kyshantry in a very close game. So HC squared actually being the player managing to defeat kyshantry in the two-player games. And then that game we have just seen, and then HC squared also managed to win against wolvs. So HC squared was in the worst position after the 3 and 4 player games, but he managed to win all of the 3 2-player games. So I think he might not even be at the second position. And let's take a look at the final standings. We have kyshantry at the first position with a very strong result of 27 points. So congratulations to him, some amazing performance. Maybe not a player that most of maybe the players doing guessing the winner or the finalists had maybe on their list. So some big congratulations to him. I think he has shown some very interesting gameplay, and I'm very interested to see how he will do in the finals. HC squared, we have didn't do as said very well in the 4 and 3 player games, but very well in the 2-player games. And now being at the second position, wolvs also didn't really have the greatest start, especially after the 4-player games. Did a nice comeback in the 3-player games, but then the 2-player games didn't go as well. And Dots, who I would have thought maybe the 2-player games are even potentially his strongest player count, especially at least when we remember that he won a big 2-player game tournament back in the days before he took a break. But he actually was relatively strong after the 4 and 3-player games, and now the 2-player games didn't go ideally for him. Yeah, so congratulations to kyshantry. And with that, we also have taken a look at the end of the semifinals 3 group. However, the semifinals coverage is still not at an end, because once per month on Patreon, where you can support me, there's a vote on what video my supporters would like to see for the next month. And in the last vote, they wanted to see an additional game from the World Championship semifinals, and because of that, we will also take a look at one 2-player game from the semifinals 2 group. From that group, I actually have seen some standings because PV4 was covering that group. And if you still plan on watching his videos without knowing any spoilers, then pause the video now. Because I took a look at the standings when PV4 had finished all of his games, and unfortunately for PV4, for him it was not enough to make it to the finals, but at the time when I took a look at those standings, it still wasn't clear between 2 players who will make it to the finals. So in the next video we will take a look at the 2-player game that will maybe decide who will be the last finalist. Alright, and with that, I hope it was an interesting game for you to watch. Not as close as the one that we saw before from Group 1, but still some interesting gameplay. And yeah, then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.